In the vast timeline of human experience, there are stories, peculiar, unsettling, and electrifying, that flicker briefly before being swallowed whole by silence, not because they lack merit, but because they are inconvenient. Stories of strange lights streaking through the night sky, of encounters too vivid to be hallucinations, of unexplained phenomena that defy conventional reasoning. These are stories the world forgot, perhaps by design. Welcome to the Silent Visitors, encounters they tried to erase, a journey through time and secrecy, where we unravel UFO incidents that once stirred public imagination, only to vanish under the weight of bureaucracy, media manipulation, and collective amnesia. In the modern era, especially post-World War II, sightings of unidentified flying objects surged globally. Radar systems became more advanced, flight logs more meticulous, and ordinary citizens increasingly aware of the strange and inexplicable. It wasn't just blurry photographs or fleeting glimpses anymore. People reported physical effects, burns, radiation sickness, time distortions, and missing time. Trained professionals, pilots, police officers, military personnel stepped forward with their accounts, and yet many of these stories faded from public discourse, erased not by disbelief but by neglect. Some cases like Roswell or Area 51 remain cultural staples, but others, arguably more disturbing and more credible, are now mere footnotes, forgotten pages in dusty files, some declassified, some still redacted. The incidents we're about to explore weren't hoaxes or hearsay. They were real, investigated, and then, for reasons unknown, swept under the rug. Our first case takes us to the heart of rural Minnesota in 1979. A deputy sheriff encounters something that leaves both him and his patrol car mysteriously damaged. Then we shift to Canada's wilderness, where a man is physically burned by a strange craft. Next, we travel to a schoolyard in Australia, where over 200 children and teachers witnessed something unexplainable. We'll also dive into the chilling disappearance of a young Australian pilot, whose final radio transmission may have captured more than just static. And finally, we'll explore the governmental machinery that ensures these encounters don't make headlines, cover-ups that never even had the chance to be debunked because they were never widely known. These are stories that challenge the dominant narrative that UFOs are mere fantasy. They represent encounters with something beyond our understanding, yet treated with eerie indifference or deliberate silence. Whether you believe in aliens, interdimensional travel, secret military technology, or psychological anomalies, one thing is certain: people saw something, people were affected, and these cases deserve a place in our collective memory. Before we begin, let's address a question that's often left out of such discussions. Why do some UFO cases become globally recognized while others fade away? It's not just a matter of evidence. Often, the more compelling the case, the quicker it's buried. Media attention plays a major role. If a case breaks during a political crisis, major war, or economic turmoil, it may get overshadowed. Other times, the witnesses themselves are silenced or discredited, often aggressively. And in many cases, government and military involvement ensures that the narrative is either controlled or dismissed entirely. Another reason is geography. Sightings in rural America or remote parts of Canada and Australia don't always make international news. Language barriers, cultural stigmas, and logistical challenges often prevent these stories from gaining traction. And finally, there is what we can only describe as institutional forgetting, a type of passive erasure that occurs when inconvenient truths don't align with what governments, media, or scientific institutions want to be true. After the initial shock fades, a story is left to die, forgotten not because it was disproven but because no one followed up. This video is our effort to follow up. We live in an age where digital footprints are forever. Leaks, declassified documents, whistleblower testimonies, and the democratization of media have made it harder to bury the past. But much of the damage has already been done. These stories have slipped through the cracks for decades, and in that time, Many of the original witnesses have passed away, records have been lost, and memories have faded. Still, fragments remain. Eyewitness testimonies, archived news clips, photographs, radio transmissions, and handwritten reports. Breadcrumbs that lead us back to the moment of encounter. Our mission is to trace those breadcrumbs, to reconstruct these events as faithfully as possible, and to ask the questions that were never given proper answers. Are we alone, or are we simply looking in the wrong places? In this documentary, we won't sensationalize. You won't hear claims of reptilian overlords or hidden moon bases. Instead, you'll hear about real people who witnessed something extraordinary and who were often punished, dismissed, or ignored for speaking up. These are stories not of belief but of record, what was seen, what was felt, what was investigated, and what was left behind. Each case has been selected not only for its mystery but for its credibility. Many involved physical evidence, damaged vehicles, radar data, injuries, or multiple witnesses. Others were subject to formal investigations by law enforcement or government agencies, and yet, despite all this, they've largely disappeared from public consciousness. Why? That's a question we'll revisit throughout this series. Some believe that a slow drip disclosure is underway. The governments are preparing the public for the truth, one small leak at a time. Others believe the silence will continue because the truth is too disruptive to reveal. Whether the phenomenon is extraterrestrial, interdimensional, or psychological, the common thread is this: there is something happening, and many are trying to pretend it isn't. By the end of this documentary, you may find yourself more skeptical, or you may find yourself looking at the sky with different eyes. Either way, you will walk away informed, not just about the incidents themselves, but about the social machinery that determines which truths we accept and which ones we erase. So settle in, turn down the lights, and prepare to uncover the forgotten encounters that were too strange, too real, and too threatening to be allowed into the mainstream. These are the silent visitors. The Val Johnson Incident, Minnesota, 1979. In the early hours of the morning on August 27, 1979, a Minnesota deputy sheriff named Val Johnson was on routine patrol duty in the quiet rural area near Warren, a small town close to the Canadian border. What he encountered that night would become one of the most baffling and physically impactful UFO cases ever recorded, and yet over time, it faded from public attention, buried beneath skepticism and silence. Val Johnson was an experienced law enforcement officer, known for his calm demeanor and professionalism. On that fateful night, shortly after midnight, he was driving his squad car along a gravel road when he noticed a bright light ahead. At first, Johnson assumed it was an approaching vehicle, but as he drew closer, the light intensified, blinding him with an eerie blue glow that filled the windshield. Suddenly, the light struck the patrol car directly. Johnson was thrown violently backward in his seat, and his car collided with a nearby ditch and a utility pole. When the shock wore off, Johnson was disoriented but alive. He immediately called for help. What made this case extraordinary was the physical evidence and Johnson's condition after the incident. His squad car suffered extensive damage. The windshield was shattered, the headlight and emergency light on the passenger side were broken, and the radio antenna was bent in a peculiar way. Even more strange was that the clock on the dashboard had stopped at exactly 12:14 a.m., and the timer on his film camera had also frozen at the same time. Val Johnson himself had a bruised face, a cracked rib, and a shattered wrist. Injuries consistent with a high-impact collision, yet the patrol car's damage suggested a force unlike any crash with an ordinary vehicle. Most bafflingly, there was no other vehicle around when officers arrived on the scene, no signs of a hit-and-run or any other car nearby. Johnson recounted his experience as follows. As As he drove, the blue-white light suddenly enveloped his car. He felt an intense flash of light and a sharp impact. For several minutes he was confused and unable to recall exactly what had happened, but he remembered seeing the light coming from an unidentified object hovering near the road. What had hit his patrol car? What was that light? And how could it cause such physical damage without leaving a trace of another vehicle? The local police conducted an investigation documenting the damage and taking Johnson's testimony seriously. The sheriff's department concluded that Johnson's story was genuine and no evidence suggested fabrication or hallucination. His injuries and the vehicle damage were real. Yet, as the incident became public knowledge, the narrative shifted. Skeptics and some local media suggested that Johnson might have fallen asleep at the wheel or crashed into a pole, fabricating the story afterward to cover embarrassment. Others speculated it was a hoax, or that Johnson had simply been dazzled by a car's headlights. But these explanations didn't hold up under scrutiny. The precise stoppage of the vehicle's clock and camera timer was highly unusual, something that standard collisions do not produce. Moreover, Johnson's physical injuries and damage to the car were not consistent with a typical roadside crash. In the years following the incident, UFO researchers and investigators interviewed Johnson multiple times. He remained steadfast in his account, emphasizing that he had no motive to lie and that the experience had shaken him profoundly. What makes the Val Johnson incident particularly compelling is the alignment of physical evidence and credible witness testimony. Unlike many UFO reports that rely solely on eyewitness accounts, Johnson's case includes measurable damage and documented injuries. This lends an unusual weight to the encounter. Adding another layer of mystery, the Minnesota Department of Public Safety reportedly confiscated the squad car and conducted their own secret investigation. The details remain classified, fueling conspiracy theories that government agencies quietly suppressed the case to avoid public panic or embarrassment. The incident also gained attention from the Air Force's Project Blue Book team, who investigated UFO sightings throughout the mid-20th century. However, the investigation was inconclusive and the case was filed away as unknown, never reaching a definitive explanation. To this day, the exact nature of the light that struck Val Johnson's patrol car remains a mystery. Was it a craft of unknown origin, a natural phenomenon gone awry, or something else entirely? The Val Johnson incident is a powerful reminder that not all UFO encounters are harmless glimpses of light in the sky. Some leave physical scars, provoke fear, and raise profound questions about what is really out there. Yet, despite the seriousness of the case and the credibility of the witness, the incident faded from mainstream awareness. Within a few years, it was overshadowed by other, more sensational UFO stories and eventually relegated to the archives of fringe UFO research. This pattern, credible cases dismissed or forgotten, is a recurring theme in UFO history. It begs the question, why are incidents like Val Johnson's ignored while others capture the public imagination? One theory is that cases involving physical evidence and injury raise uncomfortable questions for governments and militaries. If something unknown can physically interact with humans and their machines, it implies advanced technology or entities beyond human understanding. Such a reality could disrupt military security, technological dominance, and societal norms. Consequently, it may be easier to downplay or suppress such stories rather than investigate openly. The Val Johnson incident, with its clear injuries and damage, may have been an inconvenient truth that authorities preferred to quietly bury. In the decades since, UFO research has evolved, the internet age has allowed many forgotten incidents like Val Johnson's to resurface and gain new attention from researchers and enthusiasts worldwide. Still, the incident stands as one of the most physically documented and mysterious encounters in UFO history, a silent visitor that left a lasting mark but was almost erased from public memory. As we move forward in this documentary, we'll explore other cases where witnesses encountered the unexplainable, sometimes with even more haunting consequences. The Falcon Lake Incident. Nestled in the remote wilderness of Manitoba, Canada, lies Falcon Lake, a serene, wooded area that became the backdrop for one of the most well-documented and perplexing UFO encounters in history. The Falcon Lake Incident, which occurred in May 1967, is notable not only for the chilling testimony of its primary witness, but also for the physical evidence and medical effects that followed. The man at the center of the encounter was Stefan Michalak, a 51-year-old industrial mechanic and amateur geologist. Michalak was an experienced outdoorsman who often explored the rugged terrain around Falcon Lake in search of mineral deposits and interesting geological formations. He was well respected in his community and known for his level-headedness. On the afternoon of May 20th, 1967, Michalak set out on one of his regular excursions near the lake, equipped with his tools and equipment. As he hiked through the woods, he came across two unusual objects resting near a rock formation. According to his account, these were two cigar-shaped metallic craft, each approximately 40 feet long, with numerous small circular windows or vents along their sides. One of the crafts, he said, had a door that opened to reveal a brightly lit interior, but Michalak did not enter. As he approached closer, the door suddenly closed and the craft emitted a hissing noise. Michalak, unnerved but curious, decided to keep observing. Suddenly, the craft he was nearest to began to emit a strange, grid-like pattern of hot gas or flames from its surface, which burned his clothing and caused intense pain to his chest and stomach. The burn was not superficial. It left a pattern of tiny puncture wounds and blistering that doctors later compared to a grid. Panicked, Michalak staggered away and sought help in the nearby town. His injuries were treated at a hospital, where doctors were baffled by the nature of the burns and his deteriorating health. He reported symptoms including severe nausea, vomiting, fatigue, and signs consistent with radiation sickness. Despite his injuries, Michalak maintained his story. He had encountered two unidentified flying objects and was physically harmed by one of them. His account was met with a mix of skepticism, curiosity, and intrigue. What sets the Falcon Lake incident apart from many UFO reports is the presence of multiple corroborating elements. First, there were witnesses who observed unusual lights and sounds near the lake on the day of the incident. Local residents reported seeing strange objects in the sky and hearing hissing noises, which some attributed to the crafts Michalak described. Second, scientific tests conducted on Michalak's clothing found elevated levels of radioactive contamination, consistent with exposure to an unknown source. Samples of the soil and rocks near the site also showed traces of unusual radiation. Third, photographs taken by Michalak before the incident captured images of unusual shapes in the sky near Falcon Lake, although these photos remain ambiguous and open to interpretation. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, launched an investigation, as did the Canadian Department of National Defense and the US Air Force. However, official explanations ranged from outright dismissal of the event as a hoax to speculation about misidentified natural phenomena or secret military aircraft. Michalak, for his part, stuck to his story until his death in 1999, despite ridicule and disbelief from some quarters. The physical evidence of radiation burns and contamination distinguishes the Falcon Lake incident as one of the rare cases where a UFO encounter caused documented physical harm to a human being. The pattern of burns on Michalak's chest was photographed and studied by medical experts, yet no conventional explanation was found. Some UFO researchers suggest that the craft Michalak encountered were experimental vehicles capable of emitting hazardous energy fields. Others propose extraterrestrial origins, speculating that the crafts used unfamiliar propulsion or energy technologies that interacted dangerously with human tissue. Whatever the truth, the Falcon Lake incident serves as a chilling reminder that contact with unknown phenomena may have serious and lasting consequences. Interestingly, despite the incident's severity and the official investigations, it failed to capture widespread media attention outside Canada at the time. The story circulated primarily within UFO enthusiast circles and was overshadowed by other headline-grabbing events of the late 1960s, including the Vietnam War and the Apollo space program. Over the years, the Falcon Lake incident has been referenced in various documentaries, books and conferences, but it remains relatively obscure compared to other UFO cases. Why? Again, we see a pattern. The combination of medical evidence and physical injury made the case sensitive. Governments may have been reluctant to acknowledge such incidents publicly, fearing public panic or damaging credibility. In recent decades, declassified documents have shed more light on government knowledge of such events, but the full truth remains elusive. The Falcon Lake incident is not only a story of strange lights and mysterious craft, it's a story of a man who paid a personal price for his encounter, and of a mystery that still burns beneath the surface of public awareness. As we leave the cold forests of Manitoba behind, our next stop takes us to the warm suburbs of Melbourne, Australia, where hundreds of witnesses, including schoolchildren, encountered an unexplainable event that shook their community. On a seemingly ordinary day in the spring of 1966, the quiet suburb of Westall, located on the outskirts of Melbourne, Australia, became the stage for one of the most remarkable and still largely unexplained mass UFO sightings in history. What makes the Westall incident stand out is the sheer number of eyewitnesses. Over 200 people, including schoolchildren, teachers, and local residents, who reported witnessing a strange silver object hovering silently before disappearing into the sky. The events unfolded on April 6, 1966, during the mid-morning hours at Westall High School. Students were outside enjoying their recess when suddenly several noticed a strange metallic object descending slowly into a nearby field. Descriptions varied slightly, but were consistent in portraying a saucer-shaped craft approximately 30 feet in diameter, with a smooth reflective surface. The object reportedly hovered over the grass for several minutes. Witnesses observed it make unusual movements, including ascending rapidly and performing maneuvers that defied conventional aviation. Some students recalled the craft emitting a soft humming sound. As word spread quickly through the school, more students and faculty members gathered to watch the phenomenon. Several curious individuals approached the object, but it remained stationary, almost as if observing them in return. Suddenly, without warning, the craft accelerated skyward at an incredible speed, disappearing beyond the clouds. In the aftermath, the local authorities arrived at the scene, quickly cordoning off the area where the craft had allegedly landed. Witnesses reported that uniformed officials questioned many of the students and teachers, warning them against discussing the incident publicly. Some claim that photographic evidence taken by students was confiscated or destroyed. The Westall incident has been heavily investigated by UFO researchers, but official responses from government agencies remained minimal and often dismissive. Local newspapers at the time reported on strange lights seen in the area, but did not delve deeply into the mass sighting. What adds to the enigma is that in the days following the event, witnesses experienced a strange atmosphere of silence and denial. Teachers reportedly discouraged discussion, and many students felt a subtle pressure to forget what they had seen. Over the years, the Westall incident has become an important case in Australian UFO law, a rare instance where a large group of credible witnesses, including children, teachers, and adults, reported a shared experience. Investigations have uncovered no conventional explanation for the craft. The military claimed no knowledge of any aircraft or exercises in the area that day. Weather phenomena were ruled out, as the object's movements were unlike any known natural occurrence. Eyewitness testimonies remain consistent in describing a solid metallic object, not a balloon, drone, or aircraft. The incident was largely forgotten in mainstream media until decades later, when former students and researchers began to revive the story. In 2013, a small documentary film brought renewed attention to the event, gathering interviews with original witnesses and experts. The Westall Encounter raises important questions about how mass UFO sightings are treated by authorities and the media. The near-immediate push for silence suggests an institutional desire to suppress discussion. One theory is that such sightings challenge the control governments and institutions exert over public knowledge. A mass sighting witnessed by hundreds is difficult to dismiss as hallucination or error, and thus poses a threat to the official narrative about what is real and what is not. Furthermore, the pressure placed on young witnesses to forget or remain silent points to a psychological aspect of suppression, not just of facts, but of collective memory. The Westall incident is a powerful reminder of how social forces can shape what we remember and what we choose to ignore. It is a case where the truth was not erased by absence of evidence, but by active denial. For the people of Westall, the day remains vivid in their memories. For the broader public, it remains a silent visitor, an encounter erased from the headlines, but never fully forgotten. As we move forward, our next story ventures into the skies once more, recounting the mysterious disappearance of Frederick Valentich, a young Australian pilot whose final transmission still echoes through UFO lore. The Westall UFO Encounter, Australia. On a seemingly ordinary day in the spring of 1966, the quiet suburb of Westall, located on the outskirts of Melbourne, Australia, became the stage for one of the most remarkable and still largely unexplained mass UFO sightings in history. What makes the Westall incident stand out is the sheer number of eyewitnesses, over 200 people, including schoolchildren, teachers, and local residents, who reported witnessing a strange silver object hovering silently before disappearing into the sky. The events unfolded on April 6, 1966, during the mid-morning hours at Westall High School. Students were outside enjoying their recess when suddenly several noticed a strange metallic object descending slowly into a nearby field. Descriptions varied slightly, but were consistent in portraying a saucer-shaped craft approximately 30 feet in diameter with a smooth, reflective surface. The object reportedly hovered over the grass for several minutes. Witnesses observed it make unusual movements, including ascending rapidly and performing maneuvers that defied conventional aviation. Some students recalled the craft emitting a soft humming sound. As word spread quickly through the school, more students and faculty members gathered to watch the phenomenon. Several curious individuals approached the object, but it remained stationary, almost as if observing them in return. Suddenly, without warning, the craft accelerated skyward at an incredible speed, disappearing beyond the clouds. In the aftermath, the local authorities arrived at the scene, quickly cordoning off the area where the craft had allegedly landed. Witnesses reported that uniformed officials questioned many of the students and teachers, warning them against discussing the incident publicly. Some claimed that photographic evidence taken by students was confiscated or destroyed. The Westall incident has been heavily investigated by UFO researchers, but official responses from government agencies remained minimal and often dismissive. Local newspapers at the time reported on strange lights seen in the area, but did not delve deeply into the mass sighting. What adds to the enigma is that in the days following the event, witnesses experienced a strange atmosphere of silence and denial. Teachers reportedly discouraged discussion, and many students felt a subtle pressure to forget what they had seen. Over the years, the Westall incident has become an important case in Australian UFO law, a rare instance where a large group of credible witnesses, including children, teachers, and adults, reported a shared experience. Investigations have uncovered no conventional explanation for the craft. The military claimed no knowledge of any aircraft or exercises in the area that day. Weather phenomena were ruled out as the object's movements were unlike any known natural occurrence. Eyewitness testimonies remain consistent in describing a solid, metallic object, not a balloon, drone, or aircraft. The incident was largely forgotten in mainstream media until decades later, when former students and researchers began to revive the story. In 2013, a small documentary film brought renewed attention to the event, gathering interviews with original witnesses and experts. The Westall Encounter raises important questions about how mass UFO sightings are treated by authorities and the media. The near-immediate push for silence suggests an institutional desire to suppress discussion. Why? One theory is that such sightings challenge the control governments and institutions exert over public knowledge. A mass sighting witnessed by hundreds is difficult to dismiss as hallucination or error, and thus poses a threat to the official narrative about what is real and what is not. Furthermore, the pressure placed on young witnesses to forget or remain silent points to a psychological aspect of suppression, not just of facts, but of collective memory. The Westall incident is a powerful reminder of how social forces can shape what we remember and what we choose to ignore. It is a case where the truth was not erased by absence of evidence, but by active denial. For the people of Westall, the day remains vivid in their memories. For the broader public, it remains a silent visitor, an encounter erased from the headlines, but never fully forgotten. As we move forward, our next story ventures into the skies once more, recounting the mysterious disappearance of Frederick Valentich, a young Australian pilot whose final transmission still echoes through UFO lore. The disappearance of Frederick Valentich. On a clear October evening in 1978, Frederick Valentich, a 20-year-old experienced pilot from Australia, embarked on what should have been a routine training flight. Flying a Cessna 182L over the Bass Strait, a stretch of water between mainland Australia and Tasmania, Valentich vanished under circumstances that remain one of the most haunting mysteries in aviation and UFO history. Frederick was an ambitious young man, well trained and eager to earn his commercial pilot's license. He was flying a private charter and training aircraft from Moorabbin Airport near Melbourne to King Island, about 125 miles southwest. The flight itself was unremarkable until Valentich contacted Melbourne Air Traffic Control ATC at 7:06 p.m. reporting a strange aircraft flying above him. What followed was a series of radio transmissions that have since been studied extensively and analysed by UFO researchers, aviation experts, and government agencies alike. Valentich told ATC that an unidentified aircraft was flying above him at an estimated speed of 1,200 knots, far beyond the capability of any known conventional plane at the time. He described the object as having 4 bright lights and moving in a way that was erratic and unlike any standard air traffic. During the transmission, Valentich reported that the strange craft was playing some sort of game with him, flying overhead and occasionally appearing to hover. He sounded increasingly distressed and anxious, describing the object's movements and noting that his own engine was not running properly. At 7:12 p.m, Valentich reported that the unidentified aircraft was hovering and that he was going to attempt to identify it. His final words before transmission was lost were, "It's not an aircraft." Despite immediate search efforts, no trace of Valentich or his plane was ever found. The disappearance took place over open water, complicating recovery operations, and the mystery deepened as no wreckage or bodies were ever recovered. The official investigation concluded that Valentich likely became disoriented in the dark, mistook stars or another aircraft for a UFO, and crashed into the Bass Strait. However, several factors challenge this explanation.
First, Valentich was an experienced pilot familiar with the area and trained to navigate night flights. His communications with ATC were clear and professional, indicating no signs of confusion before reporting the UFO. Second, witnesses on the ground reported seeing strange lights in the sky at the time of the disappearance. One local fisherman described seeing 4 bright lights hovering and moving in ways inconsistent with known aircraft. Third, skeptics point to the unusual behavior of the supposed unidentified aircraft, including its ability to hover and move silently. Fourth, Valentich's last words, "It's not an aircraft," remain chilling and mysterious, suggesting he was confronted by something truly unexplainable. Over the years, various theories have emerged. Some UFO researchers argue that Valentich was abducted by extraterrestrial beings. Others speculate that secret military experiments or advanced technology were involved. A few suggest psychological explanations such as hallucinations or illusions, but these theories are often dismissed given Valentich's experience and the corroborating witness reports. The case also highlights how government agencies responded. The Australian government released reports stating the incident was a probable pilot error and accident. Yet documents obtained through Freedom of Information requests reveal internal debates and investigations that considered other possibilities, though no official alternative explanation was ever publicized. The disappearance of Frederick Valentich remains one of the most haunting and enigmatic cases in UFO history. It is a story not only of mystery but of tragedy, a young life and a promising career cut short, swallowed by an event that continues to defy explanation. What happened that night over the Bass Strait? Was Valentich's last flight a collision with an unknown craft, an abduction, or simply an accident amplified by strange lights and misperceptions? The truth remains elusive, but the echoes of Valentich's final transmission live on in UFO lore, an unsettling reminder that the skies still hold secrets beyond our understanding. As we prepare to conclude our journey, we turn our focus to the broader issue, government cover-ups and silences that ensured these stories never became headline news, but instead were quietly erased. Government cover-ups that never made headlines. Throughout history, many UFO encounters that could have altered the public's understanding of our place in the cosmos have not only been met with skepticism, but actively suppressed by governments around the world. These are the silent stories, the erased files, the investigations that disappeared without a trace.
The cases we have explored, the Val Johnson Incident, Falcon Lake burns, Westall's mass sighting, and Frederick Valentich's disappearance, share a troubling commonality: official responses that range from dismissal to deliberate obfuscation. This segment examines the machinery behind these cover-ups and the reasons why such stories are often buried rather than investigated openly. Governments have long been concerned with controlling narratives that might induce public panic, threaten national security, or reveal technological vulnerabilities. During the Cold War era, when most famous UFO sightings occurred, the geopolitical stakes were high. Superpowers like the United States, the Soviet Union, and their allies were locked in an arms race that extended into space and aerial technology. Any unidentified aerial phenomenon was not only a mystery, but a potential threat. An unknown craft could be enemy espionage, a new weapon, or something else altogether. It was in the government's interest to classify such incidents, control information flow, and manage public perception carefully. This was reflected in programs like the US Air Force's Project Blue Book, which between 1952 and 1969 catalogued over 12,000 UFO reports. While many were explained as natural phenomena, misidentifications, or hoaxes, nearly 700 cases remained unexplained, including some with physical evidence. Yet official narratives emphasized debunking and downplaying to prevent alarm. Similarly, Canadian, Australian, British, and other governments maintained secret files and internal investigations. Declassified documents reveal that these agencies often monitored sightings closely, but withheld findings from the public. In some cases, witnesses, whether police officers, military personnel, or civilians, faced pressure to recant or remain silent. Reports show that in the Westall incident, for example, students and teachers were warned not to discuss what they saw. In the Val Johnson incident, the patrol car was seized by authorities and examined secretly. Why such secrecy? The answer lies partly in the fear of losing control over technology, over the narrative, and over societal stability. A confirmed extraterrestrial presence or even a technological phenomenon beyond human capability would disrupt political power structures and public confidence. Moreover, governments may have been unwilling to admit their inability to explain or counter these phenomena, fearing that it would reveal strategic weaknesses. In the decades since these incidents, whistleblowers and leaked documents have shed more light on what officials knew but hid. The Pentagon's recent acknowledgement of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, AATIP, and release of declassified videos of unidentified aerial phenomena mark a shift toward transparency, but they only scratch the surface. Countless other files remain sealed, and many incidents still lack comprehensive investigation or public disclosure. The silence surrounding these cases has broader social implications. When governments deny or suppress information, they fuel mistrust and conspiracy theories. When witnesses are ignored or discredited, they are left isolated and vulnerable. Yet these cover-ups also reflect the limitations of human institutions. Confronted with the unknown, the urge to maintain order often trumps the pursuit of truth. For those who have experienced these encounters firsthand, the lack of official recognition is a wound in itself. For the rest of us, it's a call to remain curious, critical, and open-minded. The stories of the silent visitors, their lights in the sky, their physical effects, their disappearances continue to challenge what we think we know. They demand that we ask uncomfortable questions. What are they? Why have we never fully confronted their reality? And how many more encounters have been lost to time and silence? As this documentary closes, remember that the truth about these visitors is not just in the events themselves, but in the spaces where knowledge was withheld, voices were silenced, and memories were erased. As we bring this journey to a close, it's clear that the stories of these silent visitors are more than just isolated incidents. They are pieces of a larger puzzle that humanity has yet to fully understand. From the quiet gravel roads of Minnesota to the rugged wilderness of Canada, from the schoolyards of Australia to the vast open skies over Bay Strait, people from vastly different walks of life have witnessed events that challenge the boundaries of conventional explanation. These encounters share remarkable similarities. Sudden appearances of strange craft, physical effects on people and machines, the presence of multiple witnesses, and often an eerie aftermath of silence and denial. Why were these stories erased from public consciousness? Because they threaten the narratives that govern our understanding of reality. They question the completeness of scientific knowledge, challenge governmental authority, and unsettle deeply held beliefs about our place in the universe. Yet, for every attempt to bury the truth, curiosity persists. The silent visitors remind us that despite advances in technology and exploration, the unknown remains vast. Our skies still hold mysteries that evade capture, and our history contains chapters written in light and shadow, forgotten but waiting to be rediscovered. These encounters also remind us of the human element, the witnesses who risk ridicule and isolation to share their experiences. Their courage to speak up, even in the face of doubt, offers hope that truth can one day emerge from the shadows. As public interest in UFOs surges once more, fueled by government disclosures and new technological tools, it is essential to revisit these forgotten cases with fresh eyes and open minds. Because the truth is not just about UFOs or extraterrestrials. It is about understanding ourselves and the limits of our knowledge. We may never have all the answers, but by remembering these silent visitors, by acknowledging the stories that were almost erased, we take a step closer to the truth. So, next time you gaze up at the night sky, consider this. Amid the familiar stars, something unknown may be watching back, waiting for us to listen. Thank you for joining this exploration into the silent visitors, encounters they tried to erase. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and keep looking up.